The 2025 All-Pro team, I'm going to have a graphic that my producers and directors are going to put up for you here, and I just want you to take a look at this. And before I do that, let me go ahead and just tell you that the 2023 NFL draft class may turn out to be one of the best draft classes ever, and that's outside of the number 1 and 2 pick that year when we're talking about Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. Not even talking about the quarterbacks. Bijan Robinson, who I'll talk about specifically in this segment. Puka Nacua, JSN, who's a Super Bowl champion now. Trey McBride, Jack Campbell for the Lions. Just Will Anderson Jr., just to name a few on offense and defense. This is all from that 2023 class. These guys are phenomenal. And then you go to like George Pickens and Chris Olave and Darnell Wright, the right tackle that the Bears went and got to solidify their line for Caleb Williams. This draft was great. And this All-Pro team, I have no quarrels. I have no issues with anybody on this team. I understand it's about production. And when you guys like Trey McBride, who didn't make the playoffs and were nowhere near the playoffs, his production was through the roof. You could easily say he was the best tight end in football from a production and a statistical standpoint in 2025. And defensively, I'm going to be honest with you, you could have put 75% of the Houston Texans on this team. They're that good. But Derek Stingley Jr., Will Anderson Jr., those are the guys that kind of lead the charge, as well as Kamari Lassiter, who's young, who's a thumper out of Georgia, and who's somebody that just really solidifies what Houston does. But I really want to take the time to point out 3 players as we go through this, and then you see your special teams there, which is phenomenal and very, very important in the NFL these days when it comes to field position, when it comes to pinning people back, and especially when you look at the amount of teams in the playoffs this past season that were top 10 defensively. Field position and defense helped Seattle win the Super Bowl, so enough said on that. But I want to talk about Bijan Robinson, and I have some video for you here. Transcendent. And see, the quarterback is the most important position on the field, but you could also have phenomenal players outside of that position. So if you look at the 3 years that Bijan Robinson's been in the NFL, his rookie season, he had over 1,400 all-purpose yards. Pay attention to the term all-purpose because that's what describes this guy. He is the next Christian McCaffrey in my estimation, who ironically I think got the AP All-Pro nod for the all-purpose guy because he got it for running back Bijan. In 2024, he had over 1,800 all-purpose yards. And this past season, over 2,200, almost 2,300 all-purpose yards. He wasn't just a walking highlight reel. He was a dominant force on first, second, or third down in the backfield or in the receiving area. And I think Bijan Robinson could have been better if the quarterback situation was a little bit better. Imagine if Michael Penix Jr. were healthy for the Atlanta Falcons. So this is why I keep saying the Falcons are in a position to do some great things. Now, I will say this. You need more than talent in the NFL to be successful. That's why later on I'm going to tell you why schemes not mattering is a complete nonsense narrative. But Bijan Robinson is not just phenomenal. He's not just versatile. He's also durable. Bijan Robinson has played in 50 of the 51 games that he's been eligible to play in his NFL career. So when you're that type of back, when they use you all the time, when they run you out of the backfield, when you take hits and you also have to run routes, there's fatigue there, mental and physical, and even emotional based upon the situation that you're in, and he's shown himself to be durable. So Bijan is a man amongst boys in this regard. He can cut on a dime, and I'm just telling you, there are very few people that can handle Bijan Robinson in the open field. And I think this is a cornerstone that you have that'll make life a whole lot easier for your young quarterback, Michael Penix Jr., when he's able to get healthy. They're building stuff on defense, and when you build around that guy offensively, you're in a good position. Next, I want to talk about Will Anderson Jr. So 2023 told me a lot about the Texans because here's their timeline. They hired DeMeco Ryans to be their head coach in January. In February, they hired Matt Burke to be their defensive coordinator. And then, in April, that year in the draft, they took Will Anderson Jr. with the 3rd overall pick right behind C.J. Stroud, who was the number 2 overall pick for the Houston Texans. And you can't argue that they hit on both of those picks. You could argue, however, that Will Anderson Jr. has been a better pick than C.J. Stroud, and C.J. Stroud has been good. Even though we saw what he did in the postseason this past season, he's helped lead his team to 3 straight playoff appearances. You could easily say that the Texans drafted their franchise at number 2 and their identity at number 3. Because Will Anderson Jr. was top 10 in sacks, he was top 10 in forced fumbles, and he's only getting better. If you didn't watch him at Alabama, you missed out on the treat because a lot of times you have guys who have high motors but don't have great talent. And then you have guys who have premier talent but not very high motors. He has both. He's phenomenal in that regard, and that's why Will Anderson Jr. is an all-pro, and I promise you, you'll see more of him to come on all-pro teams, and I think he'll be one of the biggest reasons that Houston eventually ends up winning a Super Bowl if that happens. And the last couple of players I want to talk about are on the same team, and that's Garrett Bowles and Quinn Miners from the Denver Broncos. So if you ask yourself, what were some of the biggest reasons that the Denver Broncos were the number one seed in the AFC this year? Well, because up front on defense, they led the NFL in sacks. And up front on offense, they had 2 first-team All-Pros and one of the best offensive lines in football. And ladies and gentlemen, Quinn Miners went to the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. Please tell me where that is. I'm still looking. So here's my point. This is why Sean Payton did the same thing Tom Brady did, although one's a quarterback and one's a coach. Sean Payton took a year off. Brady didn't take a year off, but Sean Payton took a year off, looked around the league, scanned what would be the best situation, went into Denver because he knew what he had and he knew what he was going to get rid of at the quarterback spot, and he knew who he wanted to draft. And he could play him at a young age as a rookie to get him that experience because he had a defense like he does and because he has an offensive line like he does. And I've consistently said this, and I said it last week, that offensive lines can be solidified through free agency. And the Denver Broncos did a great job of drafting Garrett Bowles back in, I think, 2017 and Quinn Miners back in 2021, and they've been able to grow. And this is why the Broncos broke the Kansas City Chiefs streak of winning the AFC West for a lot of other reasons, but they're formidable up front on both sides of the football. And when you can do that, you're phenomenal. So this is where the Chiefs have lied the past couple of seasons. This is where the Eagles have been. This is where the Buffalo Bills have been, with the best offensive lines and multiple offensive linemen on all-pro teams. This is how you solidify a contender consistently in the NFL. It's by building up front. And shout out to the Broncos because they did not miss with Garrett Bowles and a guy from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater and Quinn Miners.